So I'm going to tell a story. I tell it a lot, so if you've heard it, you'll be okay. When I was in high school, my senior year of high school, I took a class. I took a math class because I didn't want to take AP Calculus because I thought, I'm going to be a pastor. What math? I just need to count people. That's it. So I took probability and statistics instead, which was like the super easy senior math class at North Pulaski High School, Jacksonville, Arkansas. Go Falcons. So I took this math class, and it was right after lunch is when I took it. It was right after lunch, and my last name is Jenkins, J, which means, according to the seating chart, I was always in the front row, right in front of the teacher, and this is a little bit of an old sentence, and the overhead projector was right in front of me. So that warm air from the overhead projector would just blow on my face, and Miss Bounds, bless her heart, she was trying with us, but it was a little dry. I'll just put it that way. But it was probability and statistics. So every once in a while, we'd play cards, count, pink M&M, the different colors of M&Ms. We'd roll dice, stuff like that. But oftentimes we'd get into these weird mathematical theorems and mathematical formulas, and we didn't quite know what to do with them. And so what we would do is people would ask questions, and my friend Chad, who he and I played tuba in marching band together, he would ask these outrageous. He'd raise his hands, and he'd say, Miss Bounds, and she'd say, ugh, what, Chad? And he'd say, I can smell Brian's feet. Like just weird stuff like that. But one day, Chad raised his hands. It was some weird imaginary number with math and all these equations. And one day, Chad asked this question. He said, Miss Bounds, how is this going to help me buy a can of peas at the grocery store? So put a pin in that moment. Fast forward 20 some odd years later. I'm teaching a Bible class, not unlike this one, when I was on staff at a church in Spanaway, Washington. And part of the class, part of the people who attended this class was a bunch of ladies from a women's rehabilitation center, drug and alcohol rehabilitation center called Teen Challenge. And they would come to my Wednesday night class. And I worked really hard this Wednesday night class. And in my mind, I was doing very well. I was very good. I prepared very well, and I was interesting, I was insightful, I was witty, I was funny, I was everything you'd want a pastor to be, right? I was it. And I was doing it, and then one day, the director of the Women's Center came up to me, and his name was Bob, and he said, hey, Brian, we love your stuff. And I'm like, of course, Bob, because it's awesome. Of course you do. Yes. And he said, no, we love your stuff. The girls love your stuff. We think it's great. And he said, of course, Bob. He said, there's only one problem. And I was like, what's the problem, Bob? And he said, no one knows what you're talking about. No one understands you. And believe it or not, what flashed into my mind all those decades later was Chad asking Miss Bounds, how is this going to help me buy a can of peas at the grocery store? And that burned in me this idea that there's nothing more depressing, destructive, or distracting than irrelevant theology. And there is no realm of theology more prone to all three of those pitfalls than the realm of what's known as your official big word of the night, eschatology. The study of the last things, eschatology. That's your water cooler word for tomorrow, okay? Oh, wow, people are writing it down. I wasn't even expecting that. You're actually going to get a glossary next week of like a bunch of terms so that But eschatology has the potential to be incredibly depressing. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes down. So I want you to know, yes, I know it's weird, okay? And it can also be incredibly distracting because there's a lot of stuff that people really like to know. I want to know all about this. And meanwhile, when we're over here wanting to know all about this, we miss the big that. And so one of the things that we're going to do over these next several weeks together is we'll delve a little bit into the this, but I really want us all to turn our attention to the that, to the big issues of these end-time passages, prophecies, these eschatological verses, okay? All right? And it can be, in fact, a little destructive. Why do I say that? I'll tell you this. Sometimes theology, if not properly handled, can actually do a little bit of damage. I don't know if you know that. And here's the thing. The Bible is a lot like a person. If you tortured it enough, you can get it to say anything. That's just the truth, right? And so what happens is sometimes people yield these eschatological passages in ways that work for them, but they may not, I dare say, accurately reflect what the Bible was intending to do in the first place. So one of the big questions that we ask in our theology community is not what does the Bible say, it's what does the Bible really say? Because you don't have to go too far on TikTok to see a lot of stuff that the Bible never said that people are saying the Bible said. Like, the The Bible doesn't say God helps those who help themselves, just in case you're wondering. I didn't want to, just in case that was out there. The Bible never says early to bed, early to rise. No, that's actually Ben Franklin who said that. So there's a lot of stuff that we say, oh, well, the Bible says this. Christianity teaches this. Christianity believes that. But whenever you're dealing with these broad, sweeping statements like that, we just pause as a community and say, does it? Does it really say that? What does the Bible really say? And that's really the goal. So everything we're going to talk about all the way from millennial reigns to the man of lawlessness to the Antichrist to the pre-tribulation, whether you're premillennial, postmillennial, amillennial, if it's just your millennial, and that's the reign where everybody lives in their parents' basement. It's a little joke I like to tell about millennials. All right, but sorry, I'm Gen X. No one even cares I existed. So, but that's kind of all the stuff we're gonna deal with all of that fun stuff. We're gonna talk about angels and hierarchy. We're gonna do all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, what this cannot be is a massive exercise in missing the point. So what we have to do is we have to pay attention to the point. So that being said, let's hope this works. What is your favorite end of the world movie? What is your favorite end of the world movie? And please don't put, I don't watch movies. Don't be that guy. No, type it into your little machines. Let's see if this works. And if it's not, this is going to be a real quick experiment. Slido.com, 3322. Oh, 3 participants are typing. 5 participants are typing. Oh, 2012, Left Behind, Independence Day. 2012 was awesome because that's my daughter's, my daughter's birthday. One of my daughter's birthday is actually the end of the world on the Mayan calendar, just so you know. Just thought I did. Oh, yeah, Left Behind. Didn't watch one yet. This is the end. Oh, my gosh. Zombieland. There you go. All right. Book of Eli. That's solid. Good call there on the Book of Eli. All right. They're coming in. Left Behind's running away with it. War of the World, the Tom Cruise version. The Tom Cruise version. Man, if I could ever do a class on Scientology. Anyway, we could do that. So, yeah, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Very underrated. Also, Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters is another one, in case you haven't read it. All right, so a little bit of fun there. What happens with all of these movies and all of these images is they all have sort of this thing in common. In fact, there is an ongoing, throughout all of human history, there is an ongoing reality of how the world is going to end. Every worldview, every ancient religion deals with it in similar ways. There is some sort of huge cataclysm, the gods die, and then it's the end. Now, depending on what part of the world you're from, everything reboots. That's a big one. Sometimes it just ends. Sometimes it's all over. Even, believe it or not, even Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, his little mythology that he came up with, he even has like an end of the world where this, anyway, it gets really strange. So we're all intrigued by it. There is a sense in which all of humanity wonders, how is this going to end? We ask the same question, right? All of humanity asks the same question. Where did we come from? In other words, how did it start? Why are we the way that we are, right? How do we get past the way that we are? And then what happens when it's all over? And Christianity, Judaism and Christianity together, is no different in its effort and in its design to answer those questions. And it doesn't answer those questions simply because it's trying to beat the other religion. It answers those questions because we are built to ask those questions. Now, you may say, I've never asked myself that question. Yeah, but you've wondered when it was going to end, like, when is the day going to end? When is this date going to end? Some of you are saying, when is this class going to end? Like, it all comes through. There's a sense in which we are rooted in our own impermanence. In other words, in our own finiteness. But yet, if we are all rooted in our own limitation, in our own finiteness, in our own little window into the world, why has every human in all of human history, every human culture said, what happens next? We have this eternal pull. And so what happens is there's a desire in all of us to answer that question. So what I want to do tonight in our first session together is I really want to focus simply on process, right? Because if we don't agree on the process, then the outcomes are going to get a little weird. Because trust me, when I tell you, this is going to get a little weird, okay? And I want us to laugh, and I want us to have fun, and I want us to enjoy it. I don't want anyone to be intimidated, okay? all right? But it is going to get a little weird. Okay, let's try another question. Here we go. All right, we're going to do it again. What is the first word that comes to your mind when you think of the end times? What's the first word? Here they come. Interesting. Interesting. So here's something that's emerging. This is interesting. Okay, thanks, guys. You can keep going if you want, but that's fine. Heaven, the rapture, the apocalypse, and the Antichrist. Believe it or not, that's pretty standard. Like I would have guessed that. Because those are some of the big questions. One is obviously the rapture. That's a huge one, right? I wish we'd all been ready. Any Larry Norman fans out there? Right? I wish we'd all been ready. Two men walking up a hill. One was there. One left standing still. I wish we'd all been ready, right? You know, it's not Avengers. It's not Thanos. Larry Norman figured it out first. But it's this idea of there's this taking up, this taking away. And people are like, oh, well, the word rapture is not in the Bible. Well, the word cheese isn't in the New Testament, but we don't deny the existence of it either. Okay? All right. The apocalypse. This is incredible because now apocalypse is such a crazy word because the word apocalypse literally means the lifted veil or vision. But because John's revelation, his lifted veil vision, was initially called the apocalypse, now apocalypse means the end of the world. The word didn't used to mean that. It meant the lifted veil or opened eyes. Now it means something completely different. And then the Antichrist. Oh, that's a good one. We'll have a whole week. I don't want to say like we're going to dedicate a week to the Antichrist because that sounds like a Megadeth album. But we will dedicate a whole week. Okay, all right. But we're going to go over all of this stuff. So our methodology is going to be this idea, and I want to explain three very critical words. So these are church words. This is sort of insider baseball. I always tell people I'd be the world's worst magician. I'd be like, here it is, and then here's how I did it, and everyone would be like, that's really depressing. Okay, three words you need to learn the difference between. There's exegesis, hermeneutics, and homiletics. Exegesis, hermeneutics, and homiletics. And I know what some of you are asking right now, which is, Brian, how is this going to help me buy a can of peas at the grocery store? It won't, ever. Okay, but I got to get into this. So I want you to think of theology and Bible interpretation as essentially a form of intellectual, literary, or spiritual archaeology. Okay? It's a form of archaeology. You say, what do you mean by that? It means that there are three processes to it. One, there's exegesis. There is a digging down, right? We have to dig all the way down. And then the process is called hermeneutics, which is bringing it up. In other words, we go down into the context in the world in which it was originally written, and then we bring it up into our world. And then homiletics, which is what we call preaching, well, that's just polishing it up and making it look nice for everybody, okay? Now, these are three processes that have to work together, okay? Because if I do this without doing any of this, I'm going to say stuff that sounds really good and is very impressive, but means absolutely nothing. If I only do this, then all I'm doing is paying attention to stuff that happened centuries ago, and it's not bearing onto the life of anybody else. But if I'm only doing this, I'm pulling things out of their context without any regard for what it would have meant. For example, I am a massive fan of a television show called The Curse of Oak Island. If you're not familiar with this show, for the past 10 years, two brothers have been looking for a treasure. It's taken them 10 years, and they found 4 things, basically. There's 4 or 5 things, okay? And every week, I get very excited, and I make everyone be quiet, and I listen to those beautiful words that just lift up my heart, and it starts with, there is an island in the North Atlantic, and I just get so excited, okay? I really do. And every week, at about halfway through the show, I get sad because now there's less of the show to watch than there was when it started. Like, I go through this, right? I will go home and watch this show tonight, all right? But here's what happens. Every once in a while, they'll find something. They'll find something, and it'll be like a button, or it'll be like a little jewel, or it'll be a nail, and they'll pull it up, and the narrator will go, a nail in an island in Nova Scotia? could this be the Templars? And you're like, whoa, what? How did we get from a nail in the road to the Templars? It's simple. I can take anything out of the ground and tell a story about it. I can make it mean anything. The only way I find out the full story is by digging all the way down, paying attention to everything around it, and then when I bring it up, now I have the full story, okay? And what happens, especially with these passages, and there's a reason that some people, like we did the surveys, and thank you all so much for filling out the surveys, there's a reason why so many of you answered to almost every question the third option, I don't know. The reason why is because everyone's saying, well, it means this, and it means this, and it means this, and at some point, you have to say, if everybody says it means something different, does anybody know what it means at all? And I'm going to tell you the dirty little secret that no preacher will ever tell you. None of us know what's going on. I'm just going to tell you that right now. We're all guessing, but we're good guessers because we have a process. And if we pay attention to the process, then we can trust the interpretations that we make, okay? So let's talk a little bit about working through the layers. Well, what do we have to do? Well, one of the layers we have to get through whenever you study the Bible, this isn't just prophecy or revelation or anything like that, but whenever you study the Bible, one of the layers you have to dig through is time. All this stuff happened a long time ago, in case you don't know that. None of it happened yesterday. It all happened before the end of the first century AD, okay? The last apocalyptic or eschatological prophecies were probably written somewhere between the late 70s to early 90s AD by John when he was exiled on the island of Patmos. That means that we've been sitting on this stuff for 1,900 years, and nothing has ever come into it since then. We don't add on to it, okay? So that means that when John received it, he was writing to people who lived 1,900 years ago. So there's some stuff that's for them, and there's some stuff that's for us. We have to be very careful that we're not taking the stuff that was for them and demanding that it be for us. We also have to be careful that we're not ignoring the stuff that's meant for us and assuming it was only for them, okay? Time is huge. The world has changed a little bit in the past 1,900 years. Words have changed. Cultures have changed. There was no democracy. The concept of democracy had died in Greece and in Rome hundreds of years before John wrote this book, okay? So things like that. Facebook did not exist, just in case you're wondering. But you know what did exist? Gossip, hatred, racism. So it did kind of exist. All right, so let's talk about it. The other thing is geography. This is in a completely different part of the world. All of this stuff is going down in a completely different part of the world. The world looks different, okay? So we have a time gap. We have a geography gap, right? We have a language barrier. Okay, I don't want to upset anybody's apple cart, just so we know, but the Bible was not written in English. I don't know. Sometimes you never know in a room sometimes. And it wasn't written, it was written, some of these passages are written in Aramaic, some of them are written in Hebrew, and some of them are written in Greek. And they have different language rules. They use different words to do different things. So at the very least, we have to make sure that we're doing the work appropriately with language. Sometimes your Bible may say, it may choose to do something to sort of make it have a little flash, a little flourish, make it sound more modern, but it could mean something completely different. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week, and I'll give you a resource on Bible translations and that kind of stuff. And then finally, culture. Culture's changed a little bit in the last 1,900 years. The things we talk about, the things we're concerned about. So we have to dig through all of those layers to find out what was going on originally so that we can bring the things back up and then share them with each other. So think of it as archaeology, all right? So let's talk a little bit about just the concept of interpreting prophecy in general, okay? So in case you don't realize this, or maybe no one's ever told you this, the Bible is a bunch of different books, documents, stories, letters, all kind of cobbled together in one, okay? 66 of these have been agreed upon by the church for well over 1,000 years, well over really since the beginning, and I'm not going to get into canon theory, but if you want to pull me aside, we can not talk about that later. But there's all sorts of stuff like that. So what we have in there is we have letters, like I said, we have laws, We have love stories. Actually, we only have like 2 whole love stories in the whole Bible. Bible's not a very romantic book. I'm sorry. I just thought I'd throw that out there. We've got all sorts of fun stuff. Lots of like hero narratives. There's epic cycles. There's poetry. But the poetry is really dark and twisted. It's called Lamentations. There's a bunch of emo stuff in there. There's all this stuff going on. And one of those genres is something called prophecy. And that's the one everyone gets like super excited about. Like, oh, prophecy. I love prophecy. And people think, oh, prophecy. And they think, well, what does it mean? Well, here's the problem. We all tend to make some fairly common errors when interpreting prophecy. In other words, there are rules that are appropriate to interpreting prophecy correctly. So you just can't make up your own rules. I guess you can. You shouldn't just make up your own rules when you decide to go interpret prophecy. Now, let me ask you this. Do we have any accountants in the room? Any accountants in the room? All right, raise your hands. We have to count you. That's how it works. Okay, all right. I took accounting in college before I went to seminary. I was at Arkansas State University, and I took accounting. It was the worst grade I ever got in any class ever, all time, was accounting. Took it twice, both horrible grades. But I did learn about this, called GAAP, General Agreed Accounting Principles. I'm getting some nods. If I'm wrong, just keep nodding, okay? All right? In other words, there's a lot of ways to do math. There's a lot of ways to make the books work. You can do a lot with numbers, right? Just go watch some of those Madoff documentaries. You can do all kind of stuff because he made off with a lot of, anyone? Nope? Okay, all right. So what we did is a bunch of people got together and said, look, you can do these numbers all kinds of ways. So let's all use the same rules so that when we look at each other's work, we know what's going on, right? Some of you are foremen at a job site, and you say, look, I know there's tons of ways to put that beam up there, but we're all going to do it this way because when the inspector comes by, I have to be able to say, my guys did it right, right? We have engineers in the room, we have medical professionals in the room, we have all kinds of people, and we all have to obey a common set of rules so that when we check each other's work, we can have confidence in what the other person's produced. Does that make sense to everybody? It's the same with theology. Or I should say, it should be the same with theology. So I go to school and I learn the rules. This is what you do. You don't do this. You don't do that. You don't use English words and you don't reverse translate. You don't do all this kind of stuff. And then it's going like, yeah, they were all playing by the same rules. And then I turn on the TV and I'm like, that guy ain't using the same rules. I don't know where that came from. Right? And like, I'm this and that. And I hear these guys, and I have this one preacher, and I love him, and he's great. And I'm like, man, this guy's really good until like the last 2 minutes of his message. And he's like, oh, you can do that. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, and you too can be a God that saves people. And I'm like, whoa, what? He broke the rules somewhere. Right? Like when you were a kid, and the teacher was like, show your work. I hated showing my work. I'm like, I got the answer right. And the teacher was trying to get me. It doesn't matter if the answer sounds right if I don't see the process. Hermeneutics and exegesis has rules. And so that's what we're going to do. So here's some of the rules when you endure prophecy. That was Freudian, wasn't it? All right. When you interpret prophecy that often get broken. One is the failure to understand and just utilize basic principles of interpretation. All right. So for example, sometimes people will say, like they'll be preaching a passage in English, and they'll say, they'll use the English definition of the word and then preach like the Webster's definition of the word. But the word may mean something different in Greek than it does in English, and that's something we got to watch out for. And I really hope I'm not like screwing anybody up right now, or maybe I am. There's all kinds of stuff you're not supposed to do. The other one is misunderstanding the realm of prophetic content. What do you mean by this? One thing that we're going to really harp on in the next few minutes is what is the point of prophecy to begin with? If I don't understand what's going on with prophetic speech in general, then I will miss the point in what all of these passages mean. Some of you may not ask this question, but some of us in this room have the personality type where we do ask this question, which is this: why are we even talking about this anyway? I mean, really. And why does it have to be so weird? And was it weird? Right? Some of you may come from a school of teaching that said, no, it wasn't weird. It was just John couldn't understand the visions he saw of the futuristic world, so he gave them sort of animal things to explain something he would see in the future. That's how some people did it. Some of you may remember Hal Lindsey in the late great Planet Earth. If you're old enough in the room to remember that, you've been hanging around for a while, but that was a big thing. Some of you may remember the Thief in the Night movies that came from the Open Bible Society in Iowa. Scared the living daylights out of us, right? I just knew. I'm going to trip and accidentally get the mark of the beast, and then they're going to chop my head off. That's all I knew about the Revelation. I knew that if I woke up and everybody gone to the store and I didn't go, the rapture had come. And I had a friend literally smash his face open because he freaked out about missing the rapture, and he ran through a plate glass window. Like, that's what gets in your head. And you're like, how did you grow up? Barely. I grew up Southern Pentecostal. We lived in this stuff. We would rather sing about dying and going to heaven than worshiping God in the present. That's when you know you're Pentecostal, right? I'll fly away, just over in the glory land, Beulah land, all the songs are about leaving. All my favorite Pentecostal songs are about leaving, right? And so we do all this kind of stuff, but we have to understand what was the point of this passage to begin with. And when we do that, guys, this is why it's critical. If you stay on this journey, and I appreciate so many of you showing up here, Bay Minute watching online, this is incredible. If you stay on this journey with us, I hope, my prayer is not that you'll know we are not going to unlock the secrets of the eschaton, okay? What we are going to do is learn how to make the keys so that whatever passage of the Bible you're reading, you can unlock something for yourself, okay? That's the goal. And along the way, we'll talk about how many eyes angels really have. It's going to be really creepy. Get ready. Okay. And then ignoring broader biblical theology, okay? This is actually one of the worst, especially for people from my tribe. Say, what does that mean, my tribe? I do come from Southern Holiness Pentecostalism, right? Full on, late 70s, early 80s, TV preacher, put your hand on the screen. Like, that's where I come from. So everything I'm about to say, I'm allowed to, because I'm one of them, okay? All right, but that's where we do, because what happens is we'll find a passage in this hope, this desire that, God revealed something new to me, and so we have to put it out there because people want new, fresh revelation, which is important to find new aspects and new facets. But what we do is we do that in spite of the centuries of Orthodox tradition and established theology in the church. So everything I wind up interpreting still has to fall into place with I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and maker of earth, and of Jesus Christ, his only begotten Son, our Lord. Like, it has to fit back in with broader theology. So that means that all of those passages, especially in the book of Revelation, about judgment and wrath and fire and brimstone and dragons and things coming out of the ocean and, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, right? All of that type of stuff has to also fall in line with if you don't love your brother, you don't know God, because God is love. Both of those are true. So whatever we like about wrath, and I am intrigued by how much some of you are really into wrath, I just want to say, that stick it to him, God kind of thing, that has to still be inserted and it has to harmonize with the broader theological concepts. And so when we do this level of interpretation, and by the way, that's what you signed up for, in case you were wondering. Is there like an entry-level course? But that's what we're doing. We're going to get in there, and three important words that I will always be honest with you with, and it's this: do the work. Paul told Timothy, study to show yourself a workman approved. One of the difficulties we have is that people do not want to do the work with their own biblical devotional life, okay? In essence, we want someone to cook all of our meals for us rather than going into the refrigerator and seeing what's in there. And men, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because your wife will get the delivery from Walmart or Publix, and you'll see the receipt, and you'll think, oh, there's something to eat in the kitchen because I just spent $1,000 at Walmart. That's never happened, by the way. This is a genre called hyperbole, right? But that's what happens, right? You go in, you're like, oh, there must be food. And you go in, and you open the fridge, and you look in, and you say, there is nothing to eat in here. And she says, then make something. And you say, I guess I'll just starve. I don't know. If it doesn't come in a wrapper and go into the microwave, I can't really cook it. So I'll say, will you make me a sandwich? And she'll say, no. And that's why we have in the Jenkins household what's called the sad sandwich. And the sad sandwich is a slice of bread, one slice of cheese, and another slice of bread. And you have to sit there and eat it with the most pitiful face you can imagine, usually staring at my wife. It's called a sad sandwich. Okay. All the food's there. I just don't want to cook it. And in the same way, my industry doesn't serve the broader church because we would rather have people addicted to the fast food theology I can serve you than me giving you a cooking class and you never coming back again because you're confident that you can make something yourself. So this is not fast food. This is cooking class. And we're going to look at the ingredients, and we're going to look at the proper way. Apparently there is a proper way to chop things. I always said as long as you don't hit your finger, you did it right. But there's all kinds of stuff. There's techniques to everything. And that's what we're going to do. We are not going to make these mistakes. So let's talk a little bit more about the prophet in the ancient world, right? So let's talk about prophets. I'm not a prophet. I'm not the son of a prophet. I work for a nonprofit organization. That's my joke. I tell it every time. Just so you know. First thing you need to get into your head is that prophets are not fortune tellers or future tellers. Prophecy is not telling the future. It's not. Do they tell the future in prophecy? Yes. But prophecy in and of itself is not telling the future. That's like saying NASCAR is turning left. It's a little bit more than turning left. You also have to wear a ridiculous outfit and hit other people with your car. That's really all I know about NASCAR right there, right? But if you think about it, that's what we say. Oh, it's we're big F1 fans in our family. It's just driving. No, it's far more complicated than that, right? Prophets are not just fortune tellers or future tellers. Biblical prophets were covenant mediators. That's your word, mediators, okay? Proclaiming, reminding, rebuking, encouraging, and inviting people back to the covenant. That is a word you have to get into your head. Covenant, 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 covenant. Everything we talk about, when we're talking about the Bible, we are talking about the covenant between God and man. That's the whole shebang. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I'll give you, that'll be a blank a little bit later, but I'm just going to give you a heads up. So prophets were the ones that came along and said, hey, you're not living up to your side of the covenant. God said, we agreed on this, you're not doing it, therefore, this is probably going to happen. But what happens is we just look at the probably going to happen and we call that prophecy. No, the whole thing was prophecy. And it usually starts out with, the word of the Lord came to Isaiah saying, hear, O Israel, da 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 da. And there's all these contingencies. We'll get to that in a second. But this if-then idea. So the prophet is there to remind God's people of what the plan was. Okay? That's what prophets were there to do. Okay? Prophecies, then, are God's words in the context of the original audience, which can contain meaning for us in the current, present, and insight into our shared future. This is a very important principle. These prophecies start in their original context. Okay? And I say this, I've said it before, I'll say it again, this won't be the last time. You have to keep everything in context. Any text without a context is a con. Never forget that. What I mean is, these were said to other people first. So it was written to them, but for us. Let me say that again. It was written to them. John says, I'm writing these prophecies, Revelation, the first 3 chapters, to the 7 churches in Asia, and then he names the churches. What that means is when John was writing that letter, that revelatory letter, he was writing it to those people, which means that the meaning has to mean something for them. We discover that, and then now it speaks to us. When Isaiah wrote, he was writing to the children of Israel, to the nations of Judah, to the other nations around the world. That's what they were doing. There are moments, now not every, Not every biblical scholar agrees with me on this. There are moments, though, where God, through his divine inspiration, skips the line, and he is kind of talking to somebody. Could be us for all time, but he's skipping way ahead. What we have to do is the work to know, when is he talking to them, and when is he talking to all of us, okay, for that shared future, all right? This is critical, and we'll keep coming back to this idea, all right? So let's talk about the covenant. The heart of the covenant, and I'm going to tell you this right now. The covenant between God and man is basically this. I will be your God, you will be my people, and we'll dwell together forever. That's the whole thing. That's it. From day one, that's been the whole thing. People, a lot of times, maybe you'll come from, does anyone, I don't want to ask this. Raise your hand in your heart. I don't want you to raise your hand in public. Raise the hands of your heart. If you grew up, particularly if you grew up in a Baptist background, and you may have heard this word called dispensationalism. Just sort of vaguely nod at me like, okay, what is dispensationalism? Dispensationalism says that there are all these covenants that sort of, that one didn't work, let's do a new one. That one didn't work, let's do a new one. That one didn't work, let's do a new one, okay? That's one way of looking at it. That's not how I look at it. I look at it, there's been one covenant. I will be your God, you will be my people, and we'll dwell together forever. The whole story of humanity, from a spiritual sense, is built around that statement right there. So when I read things like the book of Revelation, or I read Daniel's 7 weeks, or I read the passages in Ezekiel, or I read Jesus' mini apocalypse in Matthew 24, like when I read that, I have to read it in the sense of Jesus, Paul, Peter, John, Daniel, Isaiah, Ezekiel, all of them trying to ram this idea home. We've got to get back to this. And anything that keeps us from this has got to go. Anything that gets us towards this is good and beneficial, even if it's a big old lake of fire. All right? Okay, so let's talk about this covenant idea. Let's talk about these anchors in the covenant story. First off, there's the eternal, what I call the eternal foundation. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 through 31. I won't read all of these for time, but basically God gives them the plan. I made you in my image so that we could have relationship. That's that idea. I want you to subdue the earth, especially the birds. He points out the birds a lot. And then I'm going to give you your lovely little lady friend here, and you two figure it out. That was the plan. That was it. And here's my only rule. There's a couple of trees, ignore them. Here you're in this massive garden. Really the whole world, they had 2 trees. That was it. Of course, what did they do? They immediately said, hey, what's going on with those trees over there, right? Because that's what we do. So that's it. But that's how it was founded. The garden, the covenant is founded in the garden, and it is that humanity in God would have a dwelling place where they would live in relationship, okay? Then it's the disruption, because we can't have nice things, right? Romans chapter 5, 12 to 14, just as sin came into the world through one man and death through sin, so now we have this disruption. There's this fundamental breaking of the whole thing. But you have to remember, covenants are 2-sided agreements. We broke our covenant, but God has never broken his side. So God takes it upon himself once the covenant has been violated. I will be your God, and you will be my people. We said, we don't want you to be our God. We'll run our own show, thank you very much. And God says, yeah, but humanity's still going to be mine, and I still want us to be together. I still want us to live together forever. And it's in that he starts the plan, what I call the historic path to reconciliation. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. So, in seeking to restore covenant relationship, God has a plan inside of human history. And he starts with one family. That family turns into a tribe. Those tribes turn into a small nation. That nation turns into a real nation. That real nation produces one man named Jesus Christ. So God steps in. We have this eternal foundation, but God steps into reality and historically starts to unfold that covenant restoration, okay? And this is what gets us to the imminent transcendent restoration. Romans chapter 5. For while we were still weak, at the right time Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare to even to die. But God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Jump down to verse 11. Now, more than that, we also rejoice in God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have now received reconciliation. So now, there is an historical moment in time where Jesus dies imminently, and then transcendently throughout all of human history, salvation and reconciliation is now available. And what we realize is that while we look at time from our point moving forward, God's looking at time from the outside, and he's weaving all of it together. And he's moving this plan forward. But we also know that there will be an eternal fulfillment of this covenant. And that's really what we're talking about. All of these prophecies that we'll deal with over the next several weeks together are really about the eternal fulfillment of the one covenant of God, that he would be our God, we would be his people, and we would dwell together forever. Look at Jeremiah chapter 31. It says this, "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Not like the covenant I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. My covenant that they broke." He's talking about the agreement that it would be done through law. "Though I was their husband, declares the Lord. This is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, declares the Lord, I will put my law within them. I will write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they shall be my people." And then in Revelation chapter 1, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And then I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adored for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God.'" So right there, at the very end, it all comes back to, "I will be your God, and you will be my people, and we'll dwell together forever. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be any mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. And he who was seated on the throne said, 'Behold, I am making all things new.'" That's what we're talking about. Now, we may get into the Antichrist and the tribulation and the millennial reign and the 1,000 years of peace, and we may get into horned beasts and dragons and the man of lawlessness and the 70 weeks and all. We'll get into all of that, but what we were talking about is that last sentence, "Behold, I am making all things new." And when Jesus Christ died on that cross and then was resurrected and ascended into heaven, that was the beginning of the restoration of all creation and all humanity. That was the beginning of this new kingdom. That's why I said it this way. All prophecy is concerned with the covenant, and all New Testament prophecy points to what scholars call the now and the not yet kingdom. The now and the not yet kingdom. And I'll get into that concept a little bit more when we get into the New Testament passages. But the idea is that the kingdom of God is both now, and yet it has not yet been fully realized. Okay? It's the now and the not yet kingdom. All right. So, what are we going to do? Well, let's put up some guardrails in the next 10 minutes. Okay? A couple of things you want to do. Number one, make sure when you're interpreting prophecy that you emphasize God and not the events. Don't get too crazy with the events. Why? Because we get the events wrong. You say, well, what do you mean? Well, if I would have asked a pastor, a vicar, let's say, in late 18th century, early 19th century England, who the Antichrist was, he would have said, "Napoleon. How could you be so stupid?" Right? If I'd asked it a few years before that, during the Reformation, he would have said, "Well, it's the Pope. How could you be so stupid?" If I'd asked someone who was from Turkey a few centuries before that, "Who's the Antichrist?" he would have said, "What do you mean? It's the Goths. How could you be so stupid?" Right? If I would have gone all the way back and asked John after he had the vision, "Hey, who's this Antichrist?" he's going to, "Nero. How could you be so stupid?" What I mean is, emphasize the bigger story, because the events themselves can move around a little bit. And if you place it all on getting the event right, it could undermine your trust in the God who's telling you what's going on. Okay? Pay attention to patterns and themes. Now, This is the one place. I know some of you have been with me on these last several years in theology community, and you're going to get really mad at what I'm about to say. You're going to get really mad at me. You have to pay attention to patterns and themes. Things like numbers. Now, some of you are laughing because my biggest rule with numbers in the Bible is really don't pay any attention to numbers in the Bible. The only place where numbers in the Bible should be paid attention to is in apocalyptic literature, because the numbers are set historic themes. They would have resonated with John. They would have resonated with Daniel. They would have caught their attention. So we finally get to pay attention to numbers, all right? Other patterns, things like, for example, Rachel wept, like in Jeremiah 31, we hear about Rachel weeping when her children go into exile. That he uses prophetically that theme, and then at the same time, Matthew reinforces that theme. So there are themes like Rachel weeping, the land, the king, the monarchy itself is a massive theme in prophecy. You want to focus on the land, the law, and the king. Those are all massive themes in prophecy. So you have to pay attention when those themes come up. Be aware of contingencies in prophecies. Now this really, we got a little bit of time. Okay, this can really get a little weird. If you pay attention to your Bible, you will notice that most prophecies have if, then. Now, when we say, oh, these prophecies are telling the future, that's all they can ever be, what we've done is we've taken out the if and the then. We've said it will always happen exactly this way. But we are about to go into a book study here at Coastal Church. After we're done with our Life at Work series, we're going to start a series called Run about the book of Jonah. And Jonah is a wonderful example of a contingent prophecy that the then never happens. Because God says, hey, Nineveh, you better repent or I'm going to destroy you. He predicts the future. Nineveh says, oh man, let's repent, so he doesn't destroy them. So what happens a lot of times is we look at it in sort of this deterministic way, but if you really pay attention, a lot of prophecies are if, then. In other words, God is not shackled to these outcomes the way we want him to be, but he can move freely throughout history in his sovereign way, okay? Recognize stacked prophecies. Okay. One of the best concepts of what's called a stacked prophecy is the concept of the land of God, the Holy Land, right? So God tells Abraham, I'm going to take you to a land, and he literally does that. He takes them from what is sort of now Babel, sort of Iraq, brings them up and over, plants them into what is now historic Israel, right? Brings them up and over, right? So so you could say, see, that prophecy is fulfilled. But then from there was like, no, but I'm going to take you to another land. And then they get exiled to Egypt, and then they come back to the land. So there's this prophecy about inheriting the land, and then inheriting the land, and then inheriting the land, and then inheriting the land. And they're always coming back to the land. One builds on the other. And in the book of Hebrews, it says that they were all looking for a city that they would never even see. The book of Hebrews says all those prophecies, they were focusing on this region, but they're looking for a city. So now even the author of Hebrews stacks a new nuance into it. So that's why when we study these prophecies, we have to do them in relationship to each other. The other one are prophetic idioms. Prophetic idioms, all sorts of little things. Just little things like temple. Temple's a big idiom. Bodies are a big idiom. Little symbolic things. Be open to the possibility of non-literal fulfillment. Okay. Be open to the possibility of non-literal fulfillment. This may challenge some of us. It may not challenge any of you. I don't know. But something does not have to be literal to be true. So people ask me all the time, well, do you take the Bible literally? And I'm like, the literal parts, yes. But not all the Bible is literal. You say, well, what do you mean? Well, there are parts in the Bible that aren't literal. We don't take them literally. If we did, people would think we're crazy. And Jesus says, if your eye offends you, gouge it out. And if anyone does that, we say they're crazy. So we say, oh, no, he wasn't being literal then. Okay, so we all agree there are points where it's being literal and not being literal. So some of these prophecies may not be as literal as we have been told to take them. In other words, don't limit, and this is what I mean, don't limit the Bible. Don't demand more of the Bible than what it's even wanting to do with you. But open it up and expand it by embracing the power of symbols and imagination. The Bible is an incredibly imaginative book. It is a beautiful book. It is a work of art. It's not just a bunch of words. and be okay with that. Let the Bible be bigger. Let these prophecies be grander. Let the God of the Bible be more powerful, more sovereign, more infinite, although that's not a thing, but you get what I'm saying, than how we want to shackle him down and say it has to be this way. And there's all sorts of ways, linguistic ways that we have to look at it, right? That's the text itself. Be imaginative about it. So you have the text, what was written down. Then you have the visionary level, which is what John or Daniel would have actually seen. You have the referential level. What we have here is the contextual level. In other words, how that would have meant something in their day and age. So when John has a vision of the Antichrist, he would have remembered in his heart Daniel's prophecies about the man of lawlessness and how those two would have gone together. And historically, he would have remembered, for example, the act of one of the Greek rulers of Judea named Antiochus Epiphanes, who butchered a pig on the altar of the Lord. So when he's talking about the abomination of desolation, see, they all dance together within themselves. And then final, what's called archetypes. They're just big symbols that mean everything. And that's where the numbers come in. There are numbers that just mean the same thing every time. And yes, I'm admitting that, but only in reference to these passages. Certain animals. He has the face of a lion. Well, because lions mean something. But he had the body of an eagle. Well, because eagles mean something. And he had the tail of a kangaroo or whatever. No, there won't be any kangaroos in the Bible, I'm sorry, because Australia never. All right, okay, anyway, but that's what it is. I mean, that's kind of it, because Australia is really just full of animals that look like they're from the book of Revelation. I mean, if we're honest with each other. But all of those archetypes, and so that's what we'll look like. What I mean by this is once we do all of this work, now I can say, how is this going to help me buy a can of peas at the grocery store? Should I be worried about the next election? Should I be worried about the cost of gas? Should I be worried about the trend of technology and how it invades our world? Should I be worried about people trying to appropriate the church and the power of the beautiful church, the bride of Christ, to develop their own power base and rule over others? Should I be worried about all these things? Should I be even worried at all? Should I care? Should I care? How am I going to look at this eternal judgment from which no one can return from? Is that something I need to be burdened with? All of this stuff. And it would be very easy for me to get out a bunch of charts and throw them up and say, isn't this cool, isn't this fun, and tell you exactly what to believe. But if you can hang out with me for the next several weeks, I'm going to hopefully give you the tools so that when somebody says, hey, I know you go to that church, and I know this has happened in our world, what do you think? You can say, here's what the Bible really says. And not, here's what this teacher says, or this influencer says, or this public personality says, or this leader says, but I can really say, no, this is what the Bible says. This is what the Bible says. Because once I place my hope and my trust in the fact that God has put together a covenant that he has literally bent all of time and space to make happen, and that nothing will hinder the fulfillment of that covenant, then it's like, okay, I can breathe easy. And if I wake up from my Sunday afternoon nap and everybody went to big night and I'm the only one here, I didn't miss the rapture. But I will start calling people, right? So that's what we're going to be doing. There's some other stuff, but it's not in your notes, so we'll move on to that next week. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pray for a little bit. We're going to disconnect from Bay Minette. I'm going to pray, and then I've got a few questions that will come up on the screen at your table. Just take a few moments, answer those questions. This is really the best part. This is your reward for listening to me, is getting to know each other. Have a good time, and then you're just sort of done when you're done. Those of you who have found your way in sort of in the premier seating, in the luxury boxes back there, I'm just going to trust one of you to sort of take over, like the dads in the Progressive commercials, and just take over and get them situated and have a great time. So thanks for hanging out. Next week, basically what we're going to be doing, just to share my methodology with you, is next week we'll talk a little bit about some other translation. I'll give you some resources about like picking Bibles and genres and all that kind of stuff. But really what we're going to do is we're just going to go through these passages chunk by chunk by chunk. And then at the end, what we'll do is it's at the end where we will look at all of these passages in context of each other, and that's when we'll sort of get into the timeline. So the timeline part of it will be in the later sessions. These first sessions will really, deal with the Bible, because I feel like we're all better off staying in the Bible anyway. So let's pray. God, thank you for who you are, what you do in our lives. We thank you for how much you love us. God, now as we go into our discussion time, be with us by the grace and mercy of the returning King, Jesus Christ. And in his name we pray. Amen. Amen. Go ahead and throw the questions up and enjoy your discussion time together.